In this microcast, CCI team member Gabe Plummer interviews fellow team member Neil Outland. Gabe and Neil discuss how the Coachability Quotient Assessment, or CQ assessment, was created. Neil, a data scientist and our head of AI, explains the process of scientific validation and what makes the assessment so accurate.
All right, hi Neil. So let's start with this first question. What does the coachability quotient assessment measure?
So the coachability quotient assessment is a groundbreaking tool. It measures something fundamental to professional growth, really, and this is an individual's capacity for development and change. At its core, CQ evaluates three dimensions, and so one is how effectively someone seeks feedback, how openly they receive it, and how successfully they implement changes to achieve their goals. You can think of this as like a mirror reflecting natural tendencies in growth situations. So similar to personality traits, these are patterns that you could see over time. These are enduring patterns, and they show up consistently across different scenarios. So just as each of us has a unique fingerprint, we have distinctive patterns in how we approach feedback and development opportunities. Okay. And what makes this particularly powerful is that it doesn't just predict isolated responses to feedback. Instead, it reveals deeper insights into how individuals naturally navigate their development journey. And this understanding is invaluable both to them for personal growth, but also for organizational development as a whole.
Great. Thank you so much, Neil. Now, is the coachability quotient assessment is certainly kind of unique, but are there other assessments out there? And if so, I mean, what makes this particular assessment the best assessment for measuring coachability?
So the CQ assessment stands apart because it's a pioneer, and it was really pioneering research that brought it about. So as the first comprehensive tool of its kind, we invested significant resources and time to truly understand the DNA of coachability, not just what it looks like on the surface, but fundamentally what drives and sustains it. And so while others have followed in our footsteps, our differentiation lies in the depth of rigor of our methodology. So we didn't take shortcuts to create this. We built this from the ground up, conducting extensive research and validation to ensure we weren't just measuring coachability, but measuring it with precision and with purpose. So I think I would ask you to think of it this way. When you're charting new territory, when you're creating something new, you need to create the map. There isn't one laid out for you. There's not one to follow. And that's exactly what we did with the CQ assessment. We didn't just identify what makes someone coachable. We developed a comprehensive framework that reveals these intricate patterns and behaviors that drive sustainable growth. And this wasn't just academic. It translated directly into more accurate insights and ultimately better outcomes for organizations investing in people's development.
Yeah, maybe you can uncover some of that for us. I know we won't get into every little detail, but maybe share a little bit about what was that process for developing the coachability quotient assessment.
Well, the development of the CQ assessment really went through a three-stage or a three-phase process. And it combined deep expertise with data-driven validation. And so this first stage that we engaged in was expert insights. So we began by tapping into the wisdom of people who had seen coachability before, whether or not they had a term for it. And these were renowned coaches who had observed thousands of coaching interactions, both in the professional world and in the sports world. And these coaches, they're master practitioners in the craft. They helped us identify these crucial patterns that differentiate highly coachable individuals from those who struggle with feedback. And their insights were invaluable to really mapping out the territory of coachability. And we used this information to then move on to the more scientific development. We translated the insights from the coaches, all of the interviews that we had with them, into a comprehensive assessment framework. So, starting with hundreds of potential questions that really measured these factors that we learned from the coaches, we meticulously refined this approach through multiple iterations of testing and of validation. Now, this process ultimately resulted in about 45 high impact questions that really precisely measure coachability factors. And now phase 3, which I don't know if we're ever really going to exit, is focused on ensuring real world relevance. And so we've validated each factor against actual business outcomes, both individual and organizational level, including individual performance, workplace performance, and developmental outcomes.
Yeah, and maybe that's a great place to kind of pry in a little bit more. It sounds like a pretty rigorous development process in the first few phases. So you say we're never going to maybe exit this phase 3. What's some of the research or evidence that you would say is kind of continuing to emerge and kind of make this coachability quotient assessment a valid one?
That's a good question. So, the validity of the CQ isn't just theoretical. With every engagement that we do with a client, we're proving and continuing to validate this robust, really multidimensional assessment, and or using multidimensional studies to validate this assessment. And so first, our foundational research really established these clear correlations between CQ scores and business metrics. And we've consistently found that individuals with higher CQs demonstrate superior promotability, adaptability, and overall performance compared to those lower in CQ. Second, and perhaps most compelling, is predictive validation. So over a 1 year study with Lundbeck, we documented that employees with higher CQ scores achieve significantly higher sales growth compared to those with lower scores. And this wasn't just a correlation, this was predicted from the CQ scores that we collected early on at the beginning of that year. And more recently, we validated these findings through a 360-degree lens. And so we were able to confirm that our assessment's accuracy is not just through self-reporting, but also through objective performance data and multi-source feedback from managers and colleagues. Now, this triangulation where we're trying to look at multiple angles, for us is really what confirms that higher CQ scores consistently predict greater promotability and superior performance outcomes.
Thanks, Neil. All right. And so this last one, I guess, we've talked a lot about the assessment, but coaching and coachability are certainly bigger topics than that. What do you see as the importance of the CQ assessment to coaching and coachability?
Well, I think the CQ assessment is really can be transformative at 3 distinct levels. And so one is for the individual. 2 would be for the coaching relationship between the individual and their coach or manager. And at the third, it's probably organizational culture. And, what makes these so profound is at the individual level, the CQ assessment really serves as a mirror. It reveals our natural tendencies in seeking, receiving, and implementing behavior. And this increases our self-awareness. And it's not just interesting self-awareness or self-awareness for the sake of it. It's actionable. It pinpoints specific areas where we can focus our development and to enhance our coachability and ultimately our performance. Now, for coaches, the CQ assessment can be used like a strategic roadmap. So it eliminates the guesswork in understanding why certain people excel or why certain approaches in coaching are effective with some individuals but not others. And this insight allows coaches to customize their approach, whether that means adjusting how early they are with providing feedback, how they deliver that feedback, or helping individuals overcome specific barriers in using that feedback for their developmental journey. Now, I think maybe the most powerful or the most impactful occurs at the individual or at the organizational level. And so when coachability becomes embedded in a company's culture, it really can catalyze transformation that extends well beyond individual growth. It could create an environment where continuous improvement isn't just encouraged, but it's expected. It's part of the culture and what's celebrated. So if you thought of it as individual insights leads to better coaching relationships, the more coaching relationships that you have throughout your organization would in turn create momentum for a good cultural transition or cultural transformation. And I think this cascade effect is what makes the CQ assessment not just a measurement tool, but really a catalyst for organizational change.
Thank you for listening to this CCI Microcast. To learn more, visit coachabilityconsultants.com.